Hello, everyone. This is Brent Lowe. I'm a product manager here at Tridium. Wanted to thank you for coming to today's Tridium Talk. Today, we're going to be talking about the Edge 10 and really focusing on some improvements that we've made to the Niagara framework in 4.7 and continuing on into the future of Niagara that we're calling Edge tools. So I guess before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. If you do have some questions, please put them into the Q&A window, and we will see how many we can get to at the end of the session. I think we have 30 minutes, and we have quite a bit to go over, so I will go ahead and get started. So first off, let's introduce Edge 10. If you're at the end, essentially October 31st, November 1st of last year, of 2018, that we're pretty excited about. So the Edge 10 is our first IP-based I/O controller. It's powered by the Niagara framework, so everything that you know and love about Niagara is packed into this controller itself. So it has 5 universal inputs, 3 digital outputs, and 2 analog outputs. It does have a 45 serial port, which will allow you to hook up either a IOR34 to expand the amount of I/O that you have from 10 to 44 points, or you can use that 45 to bring in up to 3 Modbus or BACnet devices for a total of 50 points. So some expansion capability there. It also has 2 Ethernet ports. So very similar to the JSON that it has 2 Ethernet ports, but where it differs is that these Ethernet ports can be daisy chained. So we recognize and have heard through our VOC that daisy chain is very important for these edge type controllers. So instead of having to home run each device back to a switch, you can daisy chain up to 16 of them. You're not limited to daisy chain, however. You can still home run whatever you would prefer there, but that capability is there. So this device was created with small unitary applications in mind, like a fan cool unit, single stage air handling unit, makeup air handling units, heat pumps, zone control, hot water reset, kind of the sky's the limit. And especially if you add on an IOR34, you can really expand the IO and do a lot more applications. Some of the value props that we're really excited about, one is this single tool infrastructure. So you've had Niagara at the supervisor level. You've had Niagara at the integration level with the JACE, and now you have Niagara down at the field controller level. So at all levels of your building, essentially. And this gives you the ability to come in with a single tool, Niagara Workbench, and operate on your entire building. So this is a very exciting value prop that we're hearing come back to us from our customers that are using Edge 10. That is something that they really appreciate and they really like. You don't have to keep up with multiple tools, multiple training. Niagara, you can use it throughout your entire building. Cybersecurity, with the onset of these IP-based controllers, cybersecurity is going to be a major talking point in the industry. And it's very important because with these IP-based controllers, you're not hooked up to a traditional quote-unquote offline network that's just kind of hidden in your building by obscurity. Now you could be connected to the IT network, you could have a specific OT network, but either way, these types of devices are probably a lot more accessible. So all of the focus that we put on cybersecurity here at Tridium with Niagara goes into these boxes as well, just like any other Niagara version. But it also has some hardware features to help enable cybersecurity, such as secure boot, meaning that no software that has been maliciously loaded onto the Edge 10 can be run upon reboot of that device. It also has a chip that is hardwired into the device that positively identifies it as who it is. Another thing that we're really excited about is the changes that we've been making to the Niagara framework in general. And one thing to point out is that these changes are not limited to just Edge 10. They are for any Niagara-based device. So we know that we have a number of partners out there that have created their own hardware and put Niagara on it. And we've recognized that through this Edge 10 effort and through working with our what we call our portability partners, that there's changes that need to be made to Niagara to help enable faster workflows. So give you this time and labor savings at the edge, as we're calling it. And so that's that's pretty much the main thing that I want to focus on today in talking about these edge tools, is some of the changes that we've made to help enable that. And as we move into the future, you'll see more and more of these changes. So let's go ahead and start talking about that information. So the first thing, a new feature came out in 4.7 called application templates. Templates themselves are not a new concept to Niagara. We've had templates in Niagara for quite some time. We've had component templates, which allow you to take I guess a snippet of a station and then apply that to other stations as you wish. We also have station templates, which give you a starting point for a station that you can use. Maybe you have a set of tags that you commonly use. You can build that into a station template and make that your starting point for any station moving forward. We've had device proxy templates that allow you to set up devices quickly in the Niagara or other type of networks that we support. So when we were thinking about edge type devices, we were thinking about the applications that would run, and that's how we came up with these application templates. Typically with these field controllers, you're going to be just running a single unitary application. It could be a fan coil unit, could be a heat pump, could be a VAV. You know, it's not going to be a lot of integration. It's not going to be it's not going to vary based on the building that you're installing it into. It's going to be a unitary application that you probably want to reuse over and over. So we came up with this concept of the application template, which really is going to allow system integrators to quickly create and deploy complete applications to running stations. So what I'm going to start with next is a demonstration on how you would use these application templates, both from just installing into a single Edge 10 or a single Niagara device to where you can install it into multiple devices. So I kind of covered this already, got a little ahead of myself, but what we're going to see today in this demonstration is, how we're going to create an application template, how we're going to install that to a single station. And then we're going to expand on the example to show how we can take a couple of Niagara-based devices out of the box. In this case, we'll use Edge 10s and use the changes that we've made to provisioning along with these application templates to show how we can get those Edge 10s fully configured, including the installation of the application template. So let's go ahead and take a look at the station that we want to make into a template. So a little video here I can play. So essentially I've created a station that is running an application, a heat pump application. And so if we take a look, I've got a graphic in here. It just shows the application itself. I've got the wire sheet for all the control logic, and I've got a schedule. So fairly simple app. Now, what I may want to do is I may want to basically take this application and reuse it on a number of different edge type devices that are out there. So I have one heat pump application, and now I want to make it configurable and into a template so that I can push it out to other devices. So now for the step 2, we'll create the actual application template. And this is new functionality in 4.7. So we'll go ahead and in 4.7, if you right click on the config node, you can go to templates, and there's a new menu item there called Make Application Template. This will bring up our standard template dialog where you can fill in some information. So on the first tab, the template info tab, you have some metadata there that allows you to fill in some information about what the template is going to be, a description, a version, etc. The second tab is the component tab. This tab allows you to add or remove specific components from the template. So maybe you don't want a specific component to go with every one of the heat pumps that you want to set up. You can take it out here. We're just going to leave it in this case. The configuration tab is really where the magic is. In this tab, you can pull out specific slots to use for configuration. So in this case, I'm going to pull out 4. I'm going to pull out the occupied and unoccupied cooling and heating set points. And I'm going to make this my configuration for this template. Because as I install this template into different edge devices in a building, I may want to make this information configurable. So if we take a look here, I've got my slots that I'm pulling out, the configuration options. I've got the default values that will be used for these slots. And then I have what we're calling a user tip. So the user tip is there because the person creating the application template may not be the same person that is installing the application template. So this user tip allows the developer of the application template to give a hint as to what should be the value that needs to be set for this particular slot. So in this case, very simple to the point user tip that I threw in there, set the temperature for the occupied coin set point, but you can make that as descriptive as you'd like for the actual installer. Moving on to the next tab, the graphics tab shows you the graphics that are going to come over with the template. And then the sub-templates tab shows you any sub-templates that are going to come up. Sub-templates are a fairly advanced template piece of functionality that we're just not going to dive into today. But once you hit the save button, we have a new file that is put into our application templates directory under our user home that is then made available for us to use. So now let's go ahead and take this template and apply it to a brand new running station and make that station into a heat pump. So in this step, I'm going to create a blank station. Nothing's up my sleeve there, it's just completely empty. And then I'll apply the actual application template to make it into a heat pump with specific configuration. So first thing we're gonna do is just create a new station. And I'm not going to go through all the steps here. This is fairly standard functionality. And I'll just call it the application template demo. Go ahead and hit next, change the password. And then once we get past this, we'll kind of fast forward a little bit into where we have the station actually running. So copy it over, hit finish. And this will start up the station. So now we've started up the station. If we just take a quick look, enter my password, we'll see that there's nothing in here. This is a blank station that we call the application template demo. It's got an empty Niagara network. It's got an empty application folder. So now we want to install this new application template. We go to that config, we right click on it again and hit install application template. This is going to pull up a wizard that allows us to choose the application template that we want to install to this station. Go ahead and choose the one that we created in the previous step, and then hit next. So the next view that is shown to you is whether or not you want to make a backup of your station before installing the application template. And the reason why we ask you this is because when you install an application template, it's somewhat destructive to the station that currently exists. So if there's something on the station that is going to be replaced by the application template will replace it. So it may be in your best interest to create a backup first. In this case, the station was empty, so we weren't concerned about it. So I unchecked the perform the backup before the installation. So we'll let it keep going here. The next step is simply going to give us a summary of what's going to happen. We're going to install this application template. Backup is not going to be taken. We'll hit finish, and it's off to the races. So you'll kind of see a status here of everything that's getting installed. And then after the application template gets deployed, all of the configuration that we had pulled out of the actual application that we created gets presented to the user. So I can go in here and set my particular configuration for this particular station. You can see those user tips that I had there. It gives the user an indication of what they're setting and why. We'll hit OK, and we get a message that the application template was successfully installed. So now, if we take a look at our station, we don't have to restart, we don't have to do anything like that. It is currently running this heat pump application. So you can see that my configuration settings took effect. I've got my schedule, I've got my graphics, and I've got my control logic running. Ready to go. Now, one of the things that we want to kind of stress here is that instead of, if you do want to make changes, to the configuration, we don't want you to make changes to the actual control logic or the wire sheet or go in and make changes to slots. Instead, we've created a new service called the application service that allows you to come in and make those changes to the configuration in this specific location. And the reason why we do this is if you were to make changes to the wire sheet or if you were to change a slot somewhere, that is actually essentially disassociating the application that you're running from the template that it was created from, so that if you want to upgrade it in the future, it won't understand that those things are connected. So always use the configuration in order to make your updates. All right, so we can see here that configuration is there for you to update. Okay, so that at an extremely high and probably way too fast level was a review of the application templates. So just to kind of kind of sum it up for the application templates before we move on to the next steps, you know, these application templates were designed with Edge type devices in mind. Again, not limited to Edge 10. You could use these on a Jace if you'd like, or you could use them on a portability partner's hardware as well. Really what it gives you is the ability to create an application once and then replicate it across many devices and sites, all in a single package. So you get one file that this thing is contained in. If you were to do this with, say, component templates, you would probably have to manage 15 to 20 different component templates. This gives you a single file to manage. And really kind of the beauty of it is that it's configurable. So you can create a application, but you can make it configurable, because chances are you can install this application 100 times and you may need 100 different settings, configurable settings. So again, you know, part of the value prop of this single tool, the familiar Niagara environment, essentially using Niagara throughout your building infrastructure, and then giving you this time and labor savings. So creating something once and then reusing it many times. So we believe that these application templates are going to be key to that as we move Niagara to the edge. All right, so moving on, some more new functionality in Niagara is related to provisioning. Provisioning has been around for quite some time. It's definitely not a new concept in Niagara. But through the course of versions 4.6 and 4.7, and as we move to 4.8, we have definitely been making a lot of updates and changes to our provisioning engine. And so really what provisioning gives you is the ability to operate on multiple Niagara stations at the same time from a supervisor. So what we wanted to develop alongside Edge 10 was basically a superset of our commissioning process steps. So we had the goal, we kind of set out a goal of saying, hey, we want to be able to take an Edge 10 out of the box, or any Niagara-based device out of the box, and use provisioning to get it set up. And the reason why that's important is because it's not just one Niagara device. It could be 50, 100, however many that you may have. So basically taking all those steps, putting them in a single location, and then being able to operate on multiple devices at the same time. So you'll be able to do things like update distributions, the software itself, update security settings, including certificates, and then even, you know, kind of this utopia that we're working towards of configuring out-of-the-box Edge devices from scratch. To kind of give you an idea of where we've been and where we are with provisioning, and I'm not going to go over each one of these individually, don't worry, but essentially in 4.4 we had 9 different provisioning steps that allows you to do some simple things across multiple devices. In 4.6 we added another 10 or 11. In 4.7 on top of that we added another 12 or 13. So this set of steps that are available to you to use has grown tremendously, and it provides a lot of power. We put a lot of investment into it, and even as we move into 4.8, we're adding even more steps to the list. So something that hopefully, if you haven't taken a look at provisioning as you move to 4.6 and 4.7 and beyond, definitely keep your eye out for it. I think it could be very powerful. And again, I'll say this is going to be a theme of this particular session, not just for Edge devices. So think of a scenario where you need to go change the passwords on multiple Jaces in a building. Instead of going to each Jace individually and change the password, you can do it via provisioning and do it all in one fell swoop. So same with certificates. So not just for Edge 10s, but for any Niagara-based platform. All right, so continuing on with the demonstration. Now what we're going to do, kind of the point is say, okay, I showed you how to create an application template, and I showed you how to apply it to a single station. Well, how can we use provisioning to apply that application template to multiple stations? And at the same time, how can I piece together a provisioning job that will allow me to essentially take Edge 10s out of the box and get them up and running with this application? So in this next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export the application template configuration, that unoccupied and occupied heating and cooling set point, to a spreadsheet, which is going to allow me to list out the configuration for each one of the devices that I want to set up. So let's take a look at that. All right, so if I go to my application template and I right click on it, there's an option in my menu to say export configs. What this is going to do is it's going to create a spreadsheet of that. I'll be able to choose the name. It's going to create a spreadsheet that I can then use to basically do mass configuration of stations. So I have one pre-filled out here that we'll go over quickly. It's not the prettiest to look at, but we'll go over it and I think we can get the gist of it. But essentially, for each row in this spreadsheet, I'm going to apply these configuration settings. And these configuration settings are the ones that I created when I created my application template. So this is my occupied cooling set point, my heating set point, and my unoccupied cooling and heating set point. So these are just those 4 values. Over here, these are the Niagara devices or Niagara stations that I want to apply these configuration values to. So I have, in this case, 2 Edge 10s that I'm calling Calvin and Hobbs, and I'm going to apply for Calvin the cooling set point of 70, but for Hobbs, I'm going to apply 60. Okay, so you could have 1 row in here, you could have 100 rows in here. It depends on how many devices you're trying to set up with this particular application template. All right, so now that I've created the application template configuration, in order to get my Edge 10s on the network, in order to get them set up, I need to use a concept from 4.6 called bulk deploy. And this is going to create a station proxy for each one of my Edge 10s. From there, I can then use all these great new provisioning steps to send down configuration to these devices, including the application template. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my services, and I'm going to go to my template service. And we have this bulk deploy from Excel button here. And I'm going to choose a file that I've already filled out that we'll talk about briefly here. And this is kind of going into the bulk deploy functionality. But basically, this is a spreadsheet that looks very similar to what we saw before. But in this case, what we're doing is that we are deploying 2 Edge 10 device proxies to our Niagara network. So you can see that I want to put a device named Calvin into my drivers/Niagara network. I'm going to tell it its IP address is .254, and I give it its host ID as well. Same with Hobbs. This could be a listing of any number of Niagara-based devices. This is simply using, like I mentioned, bulk deploy. This could be this could be bulk deploying 100 BACnet devices, whatever that might be. So we'll go ahead and continue on here. And so using this spreadsheet, I'll hit open. And what that will do is it'll do this template bulk deploy. And now if I go to my Niagara network, those device proxies are there. But at this point, they're just device proxies, right? They're not really set up. So out of the box, the Edge 10 has some default username and password functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that, kind of bulk edit and apply the default username and password so that we can connect to these devices via provisioning and set them up. So the next thing I'm going to do is pull up a provisioning job. And this is one that I've preloaded. Typically, when you pull up a new provisioning job, it is empty. If you're not familiar with this particular view, what you're going to see here is essentially 3 panes. The first pane is something that just will allow you to run a step once for the entire job for all stations. And then the second pane is something that you're going to run for each station that you push down here into this third pane. So in this is really the meat of it here, is that, okay, for these particular stations, I'm going to go through and run all of these steps. So we'll walk through that here. If you hit that little plus sign, this shows you all of the steps that we've been creating. So this used to be 9 different steps in 4.4. Now we've probably got over 20 steps in here dedicated to all of the things that we feel like take a lot of time. So what we're going to do for this particular job is I'm stitching together the ability to go through and change the default system passphrase, go through and change the default platform credentials and the user password to something more specific for my needs. I'm going to upgrade the out-of-date software. So these Edge devices are running 4.7 out of the box. I happen to be running an early version of 4.8 here in this demonstration, and it will upgrade those devices to 4.8. Next up, I'm going to rename the station. And what this means is that out of the box, my Edge devices have a station running in them, and that station is named Edge _ last few digits of the host ID. In this case, I want to make sure that my stations are renamed to what I have them in the Niagara network. So they'll be renamed to Calvin and Hobbes in this case. I'm then going to set up certificates. I'm going to generate a certificate. I'm going to get it signed, and then I'm going to set the certificate alias on the actual Edge device. I'm going to set up a reciprocal connection so that my devices can talk back to my supervisor. I'm going to set the time on my Edge 10s. And then finally, the main step that I wanted to show here is that I'm going to install the application template itself. So I'm going to make these Edge 10s into heat pumps based on those configuration settings that we saw in our spreadsheet. And when I choose this particular step, I'm prompted for the spreadsheet that I want to use in order to send down the application template. Down below, we've talked about this. These are the stations that I want all of these steps to apply to. And now I can just simply say, run now. And that is going to take off and start running all of these job steps. And we're not going to sit here and watch them all run. I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but you'll see that these all of these steps were run. I'm finishing up here. I've gotten through each one, and there it goes. It finished up. And you'll see that it took about 20 minutes to run all of these steps. And really, the meat of that time was spent in updating the software. So we had to download the distribution. We had to restart the station, get everything back up and running. And so that's where a lot of that 20 minutes went. Each one of these job steps has a status so that you can see what's been going on. New in 4.8, to kind of give you a preview, is that with these application templates, they may have dependent modules. If we detect a dependent module, we will send it down. So we'll do the automatic detection and pushing down of these dependent modules so that you don't have to do each one individually. And then finally, as kind of a result of these steps, I can go take a look at one of my Edge 10s and see that it is running my heat pump application with the specific configuration. So you can see my graphic there, the configuration that I had set in the spreadsheet. You can see the wire sheet logic and the schedule itself. So basically what I was able to show you there was essentially create an application template, installing it to a single station, or installing that application template in bulk or in mass to multiple Niagara stations that are out there, with kind of a extra side benefit of being able to actually take Edge 10s out of the box and get them up and running by changing all their default credentials, installing certificates, setting the time, doing all those small things that commissioning would typically do that you could use that time to do other things essentially. So as a wrap up of provisioning, really what it allows us to do is operate on multiple Niagara devices simultaneously. So again, I know I've said it 100 times, I'll say it 101 times. All of this is for any Niagara device. So doesn't matter if it's a Jace Edge 10 or a Portability Partners device. You can fully bootstrap out-of-the-box devices. You can install applications on multiple devices with unique configurations. And really what it comes down to is that you can stitch those job steps together in pretty much any order that you would like to fit your individual needs. So a very portable solution that can give you some time and labor savings. So I think I've talked pretty much for the whole half hour here. It goes quick. But I wanted to thank you guys for coming to this Tridium talk. If you're interested in learning more, if you're interested in learning more about what we talked about today, there is a free Tridium University, I guess, e-learning course out there that you can enroll in, and there are things about Edge 10 in there. There are things about these application templates in there. There's things about provisioning in there that go into a little bit more detail. So you can probably, so if you want some more detail about that, you can go check that out. So if you have questions, I'll go ahead and answer a few here and try to respect everybody's time. I know we set for 30 minutes. We're going to post this as well on our Tridium website and our YouTube channel. And if we don't get to all the questions, we'll be able to, we'll post answers to those as well. So let me go through a couple here. Is Edge 10 compatible with the IOR16? Are there future plans for a smaller IO count add-on? Yeah, I get this question a lot. So we have been talking to the market about the IOR34 as being supported with the Edge 10. That is what we have tested with at this point, the IOR34. And the reason why we haven't been pushing the IO16 with the Edge 10 is because it would require a separate power source, which we thought would be cumbersome because it's 15 volt. In theory, it should work just fine, but it's not a configuration that we have tested to specifically. Let's see. So if an exhaust fan was added after we created our template, how should we make changes to the application template? Are we forced to create a new template? Okay, so I think this may be kind of multi-part. So I think this is about upgrading templates or changing templates. So over time, we definitely foresee and understand the need to say, okay, well, I have a template today, I'm going to build upon it. Well, we see you as being able to version that template. So version 1 may be without your exhaust fan. Version 2 may be with your exhaust fan. So in that case, you would have two different versions of that that you would then create essentially multiple templates. You would basically do that make application template again, give it a new version, and then you'd have those different versions. Are we forced to? So that, I guess that maybe explains that. If not, we can talk further. But what we, on the roadmap, what we're envisioning is the ability to do template management. So in that scenario where you have version 1 and version 2 of your template, how do you keep up with that? So if you're looking at a sea of Edge devices and you know that maybe 5 of them have version 1 and 10 of them have version 2, just based on timelines and how things got rolled out, how can you see that? How can you see what's out of date and how can you upgrade those? So that is something that's on our roadmap to continue with templates and give you that ability. And we think that'll be very powerful as well, because these templates in general, we spent a lot of time on them and invested heavily in them. And we think that they are definitely a big part of the future use of Niagara. And we want to give you the tools to use those and manage them moving forward. Let's see. Can multiple Edge controllers be powered from the same transformer? Good question. No, consult the wiring guide. That gives you some very specific information about that question. So definitely check out the wiring guide as you're working through that. Let's see. Is there any more information available on the deterministic runtime engine? Great question. So that is something that is we are actively working on. So I guess first let me back up. For those that aren't familiar, one of the things that we've been talking about in conjunction with Edge 10 is a deterministic runtime engine. So what this is a engine that's going to run alongside Niagara that is going to give you, I guess, two main benefits. One, fast startup time. So we've demonstrated if you were at the summit, if you've been at AHR and you've talked to us at the booth and past couple events, we've had a little stand there with an Edge 10 on it, and we can turn it off, you can turn it back on, and it's controlling via the IO in 10 to 15 seconds. So that's huge, right? Because with regular Niagara stations, that could take minutes to come up and run. This separate engine will come up and run immediately, and in conjunction when the station comes up, it can start feeding information back and forth to the station. So the real question is there any more information on it? Yes, we're still working on that. It's planned for 4.8. And actually, we're going to be going to early access and beta with that particular feature here in the next couple months. So we're really excited about it. It's coming up, and we think it's going to make a big splash. So stay tuned on that. Let's see, any other questions that I can answer right now? I talked, so any updates to expect in 4.8 and when can we expect 4.8? I kind of give you an update there with the deterministic runtime engine. Stay tuned on the timeline. Kind of gave you a hint there that we're moving into early access and beta, so we're getting close. Let's see. We've got time for one more. Let's see here. Is Edge 10 capable of running Allerton applications? Yes, it's Niagara, so it can run whatever application that might be. So the main, I guess, I won't call it a limitation, but we'll call it a feature. The main feature is that with the Edge 10, the licensing components give you access to 3 devices and 50 points. So versus a Jace, which could enable much more, depending on the size Jace that you buy. So as long as those applications work in those within those restrictions, then you're fine. Alrighty, so I've gone about 6 minutes over. There's a couple more questions out there. We'll get those answered, and those will be posted along with the video. Thank you very much for attending. Hope you have a great day and good weekend as we head into that. Thank you.